The battle is on, 400 metres from the sprint for the green jersey. It doesn't matter to these riders at all, because we're now heading towards Alpe d'Huez. In just a kilometre they will make the turn and head up the mountain, and then the battle will be on. Ryder Hegedal, Pierre Rolland are the riders who are now heading the charge. And don't forget, today's commercial free is brought to you by Nissan and the 100% electric Nissan Leaf. Here we go, under the banner, the race starts now. The battle for the stage win and the battle behind as to who wins the Tour de France on Sunday. Hegedal gets the most points there. So no sprint, not to be expected, or to be expected rather, Paul. Ryder Hegedal and the peloton behind. This is the chase group, but as they come through, it looks as though the yellow jersey is rejoined at 15 to go.
Well, it's going to be, as I said earlier, Phil, I think last man standing wins the Tour de France here this afternoon. Cadel Evans knows what he has to do on the final climb of the day. He's got to keep a very close eye on Frank and Andy Schleck, and he knows that. He knows how much time he can pull back on them in the individual time trial. But has Frank Schleck got anything left in the legs to go for the big attack, to try and prize open an advantage over Evans?
Well, no sprinters involved in the sprint there, so we don't need to worry about the green jersey competition now. This is the battle for who takes the yellow home after Sunday, as we come into this beautiful town or in the Oison area of France, Bourg d'Oison, and then we will start the climb of Alpe d'Huez. 52 seconds is the gap now. Hegedal and Rolland have taken the chance, the opportunist moves, and that is a very, very good move.
Well, third, fourth and fifth, as you can see, these are the riders halfway across the gap, and they are Jonazon in there as well with them, with Jonazon.
Costa. Now this is it, look at the crowd here, there's the sign, 13.8, the finish line sits atop Alpe d'Huez. This is the climb that has seen so many of the big names in the sport of cycling seal their victories. Names like Greg LeMond, Bernardino, Lance Armstrong, you name them. When they've got to the top of this mountain, they've seen Paris in yellow. And now we've got a Canadian, the only Canadian in the race. And amazingly, Paul, there are hundreds of Canadian people on the top today. We met most of them last night. And that Ryder Hegedal now is in a perfect position with Pierre Rolland to go for the stage win. Not the Tour win, but the stage win, and that is a big deal.
And that's what he's looking for. He finished third on the road into gap behind his own teammate, integral part of that victory for Garmin Cervelo on that occasion. The scariest part of Alpe d'Huez, Phil, is when you come around this corner, then all of a sudden you look up, it's a straight wall in front of you. It kicks up to around about 12%, and it is very scary, especially if you're a non-climber.
Anthony Chateau on the right with the maillot jaune. It's a tight fit on these lower slopes, and these early slopes are very, very hard. A massive, massive crowd as BMC. This is like the old days when Lance Armstrong was launched by his team onto the top of the climb. But BMC have been quickly pushed out of the way now.
Well, this is Fuglsang coming to the front. He's had a pretty easy ride as well. He's been in a number of groups out on the course as we're trying to see BMC place Cadel Evans, and the Cadel Evans has got himself the gap, because where is everybody else?
Well, they're all stretched out on the climbs here. They're trying to scramble through the gaps. There's Andy Schleck there. Voigtler has gone after Andy Schleck. I'm sure this man cannot have any more strength left in those legs. The flag of South Africa flies over the race. There are no South Africans, sadly, in the Tour this year. Even the devil is learning to sprint as we start the climb of Alpe d'Huez.
Carlos Barredo covers there. You've got the Schleck brothers now coming across number 11. Andy Schleck, did he put too much in yesterday and today in that incredible move of his? Cadel Evans taking responsibility here as he looks over his shoulder. He's ridden alone on a number of occasions. He's come right up to Fuglsang. He was beaten on this slope a few years ago by Carlos Sastre, who put a massive big attack in, and Cadel Evans now has got that big diesel engine in full swing.
Now every corner is named, every corner tells you where you are and how high you've climbed. Every hairpin bend, there are 21. These riders will have lost count after the first two. The concentration now, Cadel Evans knows he's got to ride, he's got to keep his eye on two riders, Andy and Frank Schleck, as he rides now for Australia's first victory. It looks as though the yellow jersey, although he came back with an incredible chase, is now slipping through the pack.
Well, we've got an organisation of Leopard Trek on the front. Fuglsang is trying to do the work for Andy Schleck and Frank Schleck. They want to pace him back slowly up to the back wheel of Cadel Evans. But as I said earlier today, Phil, I think the best form of defence for Cadel Evans is attack.
And Christophe Ribland, the rider who tried to go for it, has slipped off the back. Now Evans is pushing on here. The Schlecks are being put on the defensive. Fuglsang is trying to keep them in touch. Is this the move where Cadel Evans gets his revenge after 2 days of facing the attacks from Andy Schleck?
Well, it's what Cadel Evans needs to do now, and it's a great show of defiance by him after all of the hard work he did pretty much on his own yesterday over the final 11.5 kilometres. He took the responsibility. Rein Terme, best young rider at the start of the day. I think that's going to disappear and go onto the shoulders of Pierre Rolland by tonight. Who
is still in the lead, let us not forget, riding with the Canadian rider Hejerdal. But this now is Cadel Evans, and coming up alongside him, Fuglsang is bringing up the two boys, Andy Schleck and Frank Schleck, and sat behind, a little bit quieter now, is Contador himself.
Well, damage is being done all over this race, and all of a sudden we're looking at the control of Team Leopard Trek. They've pulled themselves back to Cadel Evans, but where's Alberto Contador? He's still got a couple of teammates in this group. I would think he's hidden in the middle there in the yellow glasses.
Sitting and waiting, and now Fuglsang, how long can he set the pace here? What is Andy Schleck thinking after that long attack when it looked as though they were riding away from Cadel? They outpaced him over the Galibier. Now watch to the left of your picture, because here we go. Will there be an immediate reaction after Alberto Contador? Because he's lost nearly 5 minutes in the Tour de France, and it is only 12 kilometres to go. Fuglsang has lifted the tempo.
Fuglsang has got Andy Schleck on his wheel, and he's riding slowly across the gap. The reaction is coming, though, from Cadel Evans, who's seen this as a danger point. He's only going to follow one man. He's not really concerned about Alberto Contador. He's got a pretty good buffer over him in the standings, but he does have to make sure he keeps in contact with Andy Schleck. There he is. The Australian is locked onto the wheel of Schleck.
The determination of Contador, who wants some consolation from the Tour, and victory at the top of the Alpe would be major consolation for the three-time winner. And you know, I'm not so sure Andy Schleck has got it right now. Cadel Evans has locked into him.
Well, Cadel Evans is locked right onto the wheel there of Schleck. That's all he's going to look for as we look at the damage this race is doing now. It has all come down to the Alpe d'Huez once again.
What a race on Alpe d'Huez here. The defending champion refuses to go out of the television screen and die gracefully. He's fighting his way back. He's too far behind, we think, to win the Tour de France. If he wins by minutes at the top, he might take his time back in the time trial. And that's a pure climber, Paul, the way he accelerates.
Reminds me a little bit of the move that was made by a certain rider from Spain called Carlos Sastre. He laid down the foundations on the Alpe d'Huez of his overall victory, and he needs to take back serious time here, Phil. I reckon he needs to take back a couple of minutes. That is possible by a man like that.
Well, when you open a gap like that with one kick of the pedals, and remember, Contador came out with a plan today which was from the gun to attack the riders. They weren't expecting it. Andy Schleck read it well. Cadel Evans was in mechanical trouble. They've all come back together for the Battle of Alpe d'Huez. What a day this is going to be. And now he's gone out of sight around the hairpin bends as we look at Andy Schleck with sitting in his slipstream Cadel Evans. Overall, Cadel Evans is 57 seconds behind Andy Schleck. That's enough for him if he gets it to the time trial. The battle at the front is for the white jersey and a Canadian stage win.
Well, the rider Hejerdal and Pierre Rolland look across and say, wow, this is Alberto Contador. He's come straight across the gap to us. Contador is looking for huge time this afternoon. He's also looking for some glory as well. Andy Schleck is concentrated. He knows what he has to do. He has to try and get time between himself and Cadel Evans. But after being up the front of this race for such a long time today and yesterday, I'm not sure he's got the giclette or the attack to get rid of Evans on this climb.
Another hairpin bend coming up. It's a shame we can't see the names because the plaques are all there, and there will be a Frank Schleck bend, of course, as Contador has caught the men who started the moves now, and Pierre Rolland grits his teeth. This guy's a real man for the future. He's only a youngster. As he grits his teeth now, he knows there's a white jersey waiting for him at the top, and that's the way it will go all the way to Paris. This is decision day in the Tour de France. Andy Schleck's probably the king of the mountains. The white jersey could be Pierre Rolland. Garmin Sabello could be the team captains. Meanwhile, this is the scene on the climb. Who's going to win the yellow?
Well, that's the big question at the end of this afternoon, Phil. Cadel Evans just locked onto that wheel now. He's in a very comfortable situation. All he has to do is really watch Andy Schleck, but he needs to keep a very close eye on the time that Alberto Contador might be able to pull back in this race, because Alberto Contador started the day 4:44 behind Thomas Voeckler, but more importantly, he was about 3 minutes behind Cadel Evans.
4:44 behind Voeckler, who is no longer now, so it's 4:29 he is behind Andy Schleck, and that's the important time gap. And then you add on a further minute, so he's 5 minutes or so, 3 minutes or something ahead of Cadel Evans, that's all. And look at him now. This is the man we've seen win the Tour de France 3 times, riding just like this. Pierre Roland grits his teeth. He won't give up as he stares at the Norwegian flags. What an incredible tour they've had this year. But now this is about the pass winner versus the other boys who wants his crown.
Well, Phil, at the start of the day, there was a 3-minute 32 gap between Cadel Evans and Alberto Contador. Now, if he goes crazy on this climb and he pulls out a minute and a half or 2 minutes, he could put himself back into the Tour de France this afternoon in the time trial tomorrow.
And no one would have thought that was possible at all. The face of Andy Schleck as he now tries to get rid of Cadel Evans. Evans rides in his slipstream without any problem as he continues up the lower slopes of the climb. Evans does not look in any trouble here, and he may find, if the gap does open, he may have to attack Andy Schleck and steal back seconds off him and close down seconds on Contador.
Well, this is going to be a huge battle. It looks like finally it's a climb too far for Thomas Voeckler, who eventually, after his own predictions, is losing his overall lead in the Tour this afternoon.
10.9 kilometers to go at the moment as we continue on the climb. And just to remind you that today's commercial free is brought to you by Nissan and the 100% electric Nissan Leaf. And Contador is the man who's causing all the consternation back there. Already going out of focus in the distance, the green Europe car jersey of Pierre Roland. The battle for second place. Ryder Hagedal is now feeling the wind behind of the arrival of Andy Schleck and Cadel Evans on the climb. They're going to have to keep chasing Contador. We've got no time checks yet. Yes, we've just got one. They're 36 seconds behind Contador now.
Well, 36 seconds, that makes the difference between Cadel Evans and Contador. 3 minutes now in the overall standings. Cadel Evans, I think, a little bit later on, rather than just watching Andy Schleck, he's going to have to come up and start to work with him to try and pull back the Spaniard.
A minute 21 to the Maillot Jaune, so Thomas Voeckler is out of the Tour de France now, but who is going to be on top of the podium in Paris? The time trial tomorrow is going to be very, very decisive indeed, despite all the mountains of the Alps.
Well, just inside of a minute is the difference in the overall standings between Cadel Evans and Andy Schleck. That's why he feels confident he can put a minute into Andy Schleck in the individual time trial, but it's a bit risky to do, as we can now see Alberto Contador still looking very comfortable in this race.
Just checks over his shoulder. He's made a huge effort all day here. Roland will be the carrot now for those chasing behind, because he's in their sights, as the spread is 24 seconds. The first 5 riders on the road. The spread between the first 3 riders in the Tour de France is 57 seconds, and that's not counting Contador, who is fighting his way back into the overall picture.
Well, Contador now is being chased by 2 riders, because all of a sudden now Frank Schleck and Cadel Evans have passed Pierre Roland on the road.
Contador continues now. Schleck goes past Ryder Hagedal with Cadel Evans. This is Andy Schleck looking straight into the eyes of Ryder Hagedal. Has been passed back now. Contador rides alone, half a minute ahead of Schleck, Evans and Ryder Hagedal at the moment. Everybody is desperate now, and we are not battling for minutes, we are battling for time of a few seconds. Anything will do.
Well, anything will do. You can see that Andy Schleck is in fact starting to slow down, because riders are actually catching back up to Andy Schleck, and that's because of the fact I think he's been in such a long breakaway yesterday, and he's used a lot of energy in this afternoon's race as well.
Well, Cadel Evans may have to try something. If he's got those legs and he feels good, he may have to try his own kind of acceleration and test Andy to see if he's tired, because at 10 kilometers to go for Alberto Contador, he started the day 4 minutes 39 seconds down, and he's fighting his way back into the picture. He's put back 33 seconds at the moment.
Well, he's getting into that zone now, and he's really all of a sudden bound